Welcome, everybody. My name is Benjamin Poole, head trader here at verifiedinvesting.com. In today's video, we're going to go over some market movers in the morning session, as well as a couple of charts that my viewers requested. So if you could do me a favor and just smash that like button if you guys like this kind of content, and then I'll continue to post these things for you. So let's jump into the charts. The first one I'm taking a look at is SanDisk. So SanDisk is down about 4.5% this morning. Here's the couple different levels that I'm eyeing today. So SanDisk, $2,335 is a gap in the charts. If we do get a surge to the upside on SanDisk, right now we have some relative weakness in this thing. And as you can see, we're trading currently at 2176.07. So the long level, look at this, upswing support trend line, pivot low here, secondary hit, third hit, fourth hit. This is identifying weakness in the chart of SanDisk because of the amount of times it's hit this upswing trend line. However, this trend line is still intact. If you get down to $2,048.43, this is a nice gap in the charts. And it's also another hit of this upswing trend line. So for a day trade, this is the level that I'd be looking at for SNDK for a nice bounce. Now, if it does start failing there, you do have additional support a little bit lower. This previous gap in the charts sitting just below the $1,985 level. So this, if you're looking to dollar cost average, you could be starting to get underwater. If you're a little bit more conservative, $2,048.43 on a 15-minute closing basis below that, you could just look to stop out and then identify the next level of support. Again, it's at this gap in the charts or previous gap right here. If it does break below that, then all of a sudden you're coming down to this previous gap right here at 1831.50. So I know that's a long ways away, but sometimes SanDisk can make these huge moves. That would be a 300% pullback. So not necessarily something that I'm be eyeing today. However, this is going to be a ton of support on SNDK. Let's go into show you what I'm also looking at. Alcoa. Alcoa is down below $50. So if you zoom out in the charts, all the way out, look, you got this previous gap in the charts sitting right here. Let's go ahead and close that out. $46.19, ton of price consolidation right in this area. So if Alcoa does drop a little bit more, this is your big support level on AA, $46.19. Not a huge move yet. If you guys are a little bit more aggressive, you do have this gap sitting at $48.17 for a potential scalp on a day trade. But for me, I'm going to be a little bit more conservative on this and wait for this major support level right here at 46.19. And from this current price where it's trading in the pre-market, that would be another 6% move to the downside. As you can see, we're starting to really roll over on Alcoa, breaking a ton of support. So this is why I would wait for this 46.19 level on AA. Here's another opportunity, GLW. Wow, a lot of stuff on my charts. I'm going to go ahead and remove all these lines. GLW put in this topping tail yesterday. This is a great reversal signal. If it does drop a little bit more, you're a little bit more aggressive. If you're eyeing to get into this, you have this previous gap as well as all of this price consolidation. Once it gets back into this level after this breakout, $209.03 is that level that you could look to get into it. And that's the level I wouldn't mind playing GLW. Now, you do have additional support if it does drop a little bit more. You draw this upsloping trend line right here. As you can see, if it does get into this level, ton of support. I know it's already broken that trend line a couple different times. However, anytime you recapture it, this solidifies the upsloping trend line for a stock. And GLW has re-solidified this upsloping trend line as support. So again, 209.03. And I know, again, this would be a pretty significant fall on GLW. That would be another 13 to 15% to the downside, but great support level. A little bit more aggressive traders, you can look for this prior gap right around $220. Only a 4% move to the downside today. Micron, here's my long level right here at $1,099.54. Previous gap in the charts. As you can see, at one point, this was a lot of support. Got this huge green bar candle off of this gap. Now, if it comes back in, you're going to have a ton of support right there. Actually, that's a little bit lower. Let me go ahead and readjust this. This major support level is $1,048.51. My bad. 1,048.51, previous gap in the charts. And from 1,116 bucks, that's only another 6% drawdown on the chart of MU. We're still technically in an uptrend on MU as well. So this is going to be a lot of support. Now, if it does start closing below that on a 15-minute closing basis, you could look to stop out. And then I would be eyeing this gap right here at $981.41. That's going to be a ton of support. After this huge run up, you get a pullback into this gap. There are going to be a lot of people who wish they would have gotten into this trade and are looking to capitalize on a potential bounce. WDC, small rollover today. You are going to have some support right here on WDC at $594.60 if we can get a continued drawdown. And you've got this additional gap right here on WDC at $585.52. If it does start closing below that on a 15-minute closing basis, I would look to stop out of the trade. And then all of a sudden, it opens up the doors to $562.92. As you can see, nothing else is really moving. Nike is dropping into a lot of support. You have a big pivot top. You got to zoom way out in the charts for the chart of Nike. Even go to the weekly time frame. Here is your pivot top support at $40.24. And I know we're currently below that level. However, this is going to be a ton of support on Nike. They did miss earnings by a little bit. However, I still like this price action right here. Now, if it does drop a little bit more today, you do have this gap in the charts. So if you're a little bit more conservative, you would wait for a continuation move and pick this up at $38.55. But we're starting to get into a ton of support on the chart of Nike. And look at how beaten up this thing is. So from the highs of $179 down here to $40.24, that's a 77% sell-off on the chart of Nike. All right, now let's go look at what's moving to the upside. FMC is really beaten up. The only real level that I would have, and this is on the weekly time frame, so let's go to change it to the daily time frame. Let's identify a gap. So here's a gap in the charts on FMC. Previous gap in the charts as well. Look at this resistance level. Once we get up to about 1309, that is going to be a solid rejection level for the chart of FMC if it does get into this level. Now, if it does start closing above that on a 15-minute closing basis, I would look to stop out. But from the current price action at $12.48, that isn't a huge move to the upside. It's only another 4.5 to 5% move. Bloom Energy is also getting a nice bid to the upside as well. So Bloom Energy, it already got up to the 786 Fibonacci retracement at $329.12. Here's my resistance level on Bloom Energy. If we do get up to this opening candle of this red bar candle at $346.30, for me, that's going to be a really good shortable level on BE. Knowing that, zoom out in the charts, look at this upswing trend line as resistance. Now, it's already broken through it a couple times, but as you can see, this is solid resistance. Now, if for some reason we do get a sell-off, you have this gap at $252.10 to pick this up. Our Texas Roadhouse, potential breakout. In order for a Texas Roadhouse to get above $196.93, it's going to have a lot of work. As you can see, this is the resistance level. If it clears that, then your next level of resistance is going to be at $200, and then you've got the all-time high pivot at $206.07. The way you would play something like this, after a breakout, you would play it on a retrace as scene of the crime. So what I would be looking to do is pick this up at about $185.89, or depending on when it hits this downsloping trend line, because this is a retrace to the breakout. Now, if it does get above this high pivot point, confirms, makes a continuation move to the upside, then you could play that on a retrace. But right now, this is the level that I'd be looking to enter Texas Roadhouse. Soundhound, ooh, great chart. It's so beaten up. So SOUN has this gap right here that it's already got close to filling. So what I'm looking at or identifying is where the current trend is. We have this downsloping trend line right here on Soundhound. So if we do break above it and make a continuation move, if we can basically clear $7, then all of a sudden it opens the door for us to play this on a retrace. We'd wait for a retrace all the way back down to sub $6, and then that's where we would have this low pivot And that's our entry price on SOUN. Knowing that we do have additional support, you zoom out in the charts, ton of support right in this area at $5.28. If you're a little bit more aggressive after the breakout, you could actually play this knowing that you could potentially stop out of the trade or dollar cost average all the way down to $5.28. A lot of different ways to play potential breakouts. CRS is another stock you guys requested. We are in an uptrend. Pivot low here, secondary hit, third hit, fourth hit. Now all of a sudden we kind of stalled out right here. In order for me to get bearish on CRS, we need to break this upswing trend line. Even though it is overly extended to the upside, look at this move. Now let's turn on the logarithmic charts, and it's not as extended of a move as it looks. Take off the logarithmic, and now it looks even more extended to the upside. So what we need to happen on CRS is this upswing trend line needs to break, get support right here at this breakout pivot top at $573.93, and then play this on a retrace. But right now we're still technically in an uptrend on CRS. So if you're hanging on, this is your upsloping trend line to watch for. All right, let's see anything else on the radar today. LUNR is having a nice move to the upside as well. LUNR broke below this upsloping trend line, and now we are broke below it. We recaptured it. So what does this mean? It's re-solidifying this upsloping trend line. It needs to make a continuation move. So if we can break above this high pivot point with a continuation, then all of a sudden it opens the door for a much, much higher move on LUNR. If you're if you're aggressive today, your shortable level is $25.73. That is where you'd enter a short trade on LUNR, knowing that you could just always stop out on a 15-minute closing basis. What's nice to see is something like NOW is starting to get a little bit more of a bid to the upside as well. Nice reversal candle right here, ton of price consolidation, and now we're starting to take out this high pivot point. Aggressive traders, $108.73, prior gap in the charts. Is going to be some resistance on NOW. OKLO, look at this level, $50.18. You zoom out, you've got this low pivot. What I like to look for on low pivots is what happened to price action. Price action got below it, recaptured it, got rejected, recaptured it. And then all of a sudden we made this continuation move to the upside. So when we come back in and retest a low pivot after this price consolidation underneath it, this tells us there's a ton of price consolidation in this area. And so this is why I was looking at $50.18 for a potential long on OKLO. Now, if you are already long on OKLO, you have this gap right here at $57.26. And on a technical basis, we are still in this downtrend. So here's one down sloping trend line. If you consolidate this a little bit more, it gives you a couple additional hits on this down sloping trend line. So this is where we wanted to see happen. If it gets up to this $57.19 level, it would be another hit of this down sloping trend line. OKLO needs to break this upsloping trend line, down sloping trend line, make a continuation move. And then all of a sudden it opens the door for us to play this on a potential retrace, which would likely get us back into this trade sitting right here at $54.37. If you're aggressive, you could start playing this now. What I like to do, though, is wait for a breakout and then a retrace, because then it gives me an idea that the trend has changed, and then I could have a clear stop out level. If you got in at $50.18, congratulations, major pivot low. It was actually $50.08, so about 10 cents difference, but still great support level. CRM is making a little bit of a move. What we need to do on CRM is 167.35 is that level of rejection that looks to happen coming up. If it clears that, then CRM is going to start making a bid to the upside. As you can see, nothing else is really going on in the pre-market, so we're just going to go ahead and end this video now. All right. Somebody asked me about volume. How do I see volume? Well, in TradingView, there's a volume indicator. I would just turn that on so that way if you go to an individual candle, it'll give you an exact idea of what the volume was in that specific candle or that day. Depending on if you have daily time frames, if you have weekly time frames on, that specific candle will tell you exactly what the volume was. So that way you can kind of get an idea of when the capitulation is kind of starting to change and then momentum is starting to shift. Once you have this over exuberance to the upside, mass amount of volume, higher than average, that's usually a capitulation zone. If you can get the RSI above the 70, and then that's likely the turn. Same with on the downside. When you have overly bearish consolidation towards the lower end and then a volume spike, that's usually capitulation, and that's likely where the change in direction is going to happen. And so I like to look at the volume. If you have more extended volume or over exuberance one way or another, then that's likely the reversal. So that's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for always commenting. I do comment back sometimes, but I do always read them, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. So we'll see you next time in church. You guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.